I was the great Zhou's famous virtuous empress. I managed the harem for Qin Shao, served as the mother of the nation, and never made a single mistake. When loyal ministers angered the emperor with their advice, I was the one who smoothed things over with clever words, resolving conflicts between ruler and subjects. When the court was in turmoil, I was the one who restrained my relatives, helping him secure his throne. But before I died, Qin Shao only said indifferently, "The empress is virtuous," yet never came to see me even once. He was coaxing a little palace maid, just because a corner of her skirt got torn. Reborn, on the day of selecting the crown prince's consort, when the empress's finger moved toward me, I quietly stepped back. The position of crown prince's consort would be more suitable for second Miss Zhao. As soon as I finished speaking, quite a commotion erupted around me. The noble ladies from prestigious families were all desperately fighting to enter the palace for their family's glory. No one expected I would say such a thing in public. Even the empress on her seat let out an almost imperceptible sigh. After all, I was the legitimate daughter of the prime minister's household, from a scholarly family, gentle in temperament, impeccable in both etiquette and learning. Whether in terms of family background or character, I was the safest choice among this group of women. The hall fell silent for a moment. The empress's finger paused briefly, then pointed again. "Then it shall be second Miss Zhao." I wasn't surprised by this choice at all, although Miss Zhao was a bit spoiled. She was the legitimate eldest daughter of the general's household and would bring considerable support to the crown prince, making her the best choice at the moment. "What does Shower think?" The empress turned her head and asked again. Qin Shao wore a black robe with golden python patterns, his dark hair tied up high, standing beside the empress with his usual distant and indifferent expression. Hearing the empress's question, he didn't move for a moment, only raised his eyes to glance at me. His gaze paused on me for a moment. Then he calmly withdrew his gaze, holding a golden hairpin in his hand, and slowly walked to Miss Zhao. Zhao Linger lifted her chin, her eyes hiding some smugness, just waiting for Qin Shao to hand the golden hairpin to her. Qin Shao stood before her, his fingers holding the golden hairpin lifted slightly. But for some reason, just as the golden hairpin was about to be placed in her hand, he pulled it back. Zhao Linger's face stiffened, almost losing her composure on the spot. Qin Shao frowned slightly and gently shook his head. "This son believes this matter might as well be postponed." After leaving the main hall, the wind had already picked up outside. My thin clothes were instantly blown through, and only then did I realize a thin layer of sweat had formed on my back. Suppressing the palpitations in my chest, I wrapped my clothes tighter and lifted my feet to walk out. But at the long end of the palace path, I saw a figure who had been waiting for a long time. It was Qin Shao. He stood tall and elegant, his heavy gaze weighing on me, his hands idly toying with a white jade thumb ring. But in his movements, there was a hint of restlessness, no longer the composure from before. Our eyes met, both of us silent. I gently nodded to him and was about to continue walking forward, but his voice stopped me. "Didn't you say you wanted to be my crown princess?" His voice cut through the wind, striking straight into my ears. I froze for a moment. Threads of bitterness crept into my heart. That is right. I truly did want to marry him before. When I was young, I was bold and playful. Finding the manner boring, I often dressed as a man and secretly followed my cousins to study at the Imperial Academy. Those books that were tedious and dull to others, I read with great relish. Even the Grand Tutor would praise me a few times. But unexpectedly one day, I suddenly got my period. An embarrassing stain spread across my lower hem. At that time, I hadn't been taught how to deal with it yet. I was both flustered and mortified. It was Qin Shao who stood in front of me, blocking those probing and mocking gazes. I accidentally knocked over the cinnabar and got it on this classmate. "What is with all this fuss? Where are your manners?" A heavy cloak was then wrapped around me, bringing a warm comfort. With just a few words, he both concealed my identity and got me out of trouble. It was at this moment that my unwavering devotion was decided. I once persuaded with clever words, resolving the rift between him and the white-haired old minister in the golden throne hall. Once, when the court was in turmoil, I restrained the imperial relatives by my own power alone, helping him secure that dragon throne. Once, when foreign enemies invaded, I sold the rare treasures from my private vault, exchanging them for provisions and armor, protecting his lands from harm. But worldly affairs change easily, and human hearts are hard to fathom. No matter how recklessly I rushed forward, in the end I came up empty. In her past life she charged into battle for love. After rebirth she is straight up. This lady ain't playing along. That move is so badass. Qin Shao's line, "Didn't you say you wanted to be my crown princess?" is just asking for humiliation. Past life you protected his kingdom. He protected some little palace maid. This life you distance yourself from him, but he comes crawling. Does this scumbag have some kind of serious problem? But honestly, the female leads take a step back, and the world opens up. Enlightenment is totally speaking for me. Not getting tangled up with scumbags, focusing on her career. This move gets full marks from me. In those first few years after entering the palace, Qin Shao and I could be considered harmonious, treating each other with respect. It is just that we always lacked some intimacy. He would never chat casually with me like an ordinary husband, much less hold me in his arms late at night and say a few tender words. I just figured he was the supreme emperor, his nature consistently cold and aloof, never easily showing joy or anger. So I was content with such days of mutual respect. Until Qin Shao met a little palace maid, Su Miao Miao. He would disguise himself as a guard, accompanying her at night to sneak into the imperial kitchen to steal snacks. Sitting in the corridor chatting together to pass the time, he would specially summon the palace servants, earnestly instructing them not to let word get out, having the entire palace playhouse with them. I stood outside the palace gate, watching Qin Shao go to such great lengths for a little palace maid, suddenly realizing in the cold wind, he wasn't distant by nature. It was just that the falling flower has feelings, but the flowing water has none. His heart was simply never with me. I stood frozen in place for a long while. I couldn't help but recall the wedding night, with drums and gongs clamoring outside. Yet inside it was eerily quiet. When Qin Shao was intimate with me, there wasn't a trace of desire in his eyes. How different from now, when everyone in the palace knows that their supreme emperor has fallen for a little palace maid. He even went so far as to lower himself, disguising as a minor guard, and having everyone play along with them. Later, when court officials had some complaints about this matter, I once tentatively asked Qin Shao, "Since you are so fond of her, why not take her as a concubine? That way, you could give her a proper status to settle down with, and also silence everyone's criticism." Qin Shao shook his head slightly, his tone half compromising, half helpless. "It is rare for me to meet someone who moves my heart. Once you enter the palace gates, it is as deep as the sea. The harem is full of daggers and swords everywhere. Miao Miao has no family background to rely on. For a young girl in this man, eating harem is truly difficult at every step. The more boundless the favor, the more dangerous it becomes. Miao Miao has such a pure heart, how could I bear to let her step into such perilous waters?" Those words made my breath catch. It was clearly a warm spring day, with even the crabapple blossoms in full bloom yet. I felt cold all over. The old injury on my knee was throbbing with a dull ache again. It was a lingering ailment from years ago, when I knelt in the snow begging Father to provide financial support to help him secure his throne. I blinked blankly, my fingers clenching tight, trying to force back that stinging sensation. Qin Shao let out a long sigh, turned around, and took my hand. "You are a good empress. All this time, you've sacrificed so much for me. She is she, and you are you. I know what I am doing. You are the empress. I will never let her surpass you." But when that day truly came, he failed to keep his word. Something valuable went missing in the palace. And after investigating, the trail led to that little palace maid. Her eyes carried a toughness that only came from the wilderness, like a small flower growing in a crack between rocks. No matter how strong the wind, she stubbornly held her head high. I did steal it. My mother is gravely ill and desperately needs money to save her life. Your ladyship's jewelry may be precious, but what could be more important than a human life? I was wrong, but more wrong than me is this man, eating world. I am a kind-hearted person. If she had properly admitted her mistake, I certainly wouldn't have made things difficult for her. But her words were too unreasonable. I couldn't help but frown. Do you know, this is something for the Empress Dowager, extremely precious, the only one of its kind in the world. But no matter what I said, she refused to admit her mistake. Looking at her stubborn face for a moment, I didn't know how to deal with it. Su Miao Miao was the person closest to Qin Shao's heart. Punishing her too severely wouldn't be appropriate. But if the punishment was too light, it would be hard to convince the masses. How would I govern the 6 palaces in the future? While pondering, I noticed the safety knot at her waist. The pattern was exquisite. It was exactly the one I made for Qin Shao before. At that time, I worked on it for a full 3 months. My hands covered with wounds big and small. I never expected that my painstaking effort would be regifted by Qin Shao to Miao Miao. I smiled bitterly, and finally shook my head. Forget it, you may go. I had already made the biggest concession, but what I didn't expect was that Qin Shao still came to my palace that night, with an unpleasant expression. I bowed to him. This concubine did not punish her, only asked a few questions, then let her go back. Qin Shao seemed not to hear my explanation, and still threw a big tantrum. As the mother of a nation, you even fuss over this matter? I really didn't expect you to be such a vicious person. If you hadn't deliberately frightened her and pressured her with words, how could Miao Miao have slipped and fallen on her way back, breaking her leg? I stood there stunned, opening my mouth futilely. How should I put it? This matter was just an accident, and has nothing to do with me whatsoever. And how should I say, I still have good news to tell him. He is about to become a father. Looking at his furious brows and eyes, these words stuck on the tip of my tongue. Then I swallowed them back down. For a moment, I just felt dazed. These years I've served him with my true heart. In the end, still can't compare to a Su Miao Miao. Truly a crushing defeat. From then on, Su Miao Miao's shadow was everywhere in the palace. The peonies in the imperial garden were uprooted and replaced with small white wildflowers. The bamboo along the palace paths was also cut down and replaced with willow trees. All because she liked it. Qin Shao's gaze was all on Su Miao Miao. He didn't remember that I once suffered from a cough, much less notice that when willow catkins filled the sky, I would cough until my eyes turned red, unable to control myself. At the palace banquet on the Lantern Festival, when assassins attacked, Qin Shao instinctively protected Su Miao Miao behind him, completely forgetting about me at his side, even though I was already 7 months pregnant. The assassins came fiercely, their blades flashing like lightning. I could only cover my belly and dodge with difficulty. The assassins were going after Qin Shao. His side was even more dangerous, with people constantly pursuing him. At the critical moment, Su Miao Miao suddenly turned sideways and pushed me out, blocking the assassin for an instant. They took the opportunity to rush to the Imperial Guard's side, and the situation was reversed in an instant. But I went into premature labor from the shock and lost the child in my womb. Basin after basin of bloody water was carried out by the palace servants. Qin Shao tucked in the corner of my blanket, his face showing reluctance. I'll use the best medicinal herbs to restore your health. Don't worry, we'll have children eventually. In any case, your life isn't in danger. Don't blame Miao Miao for this. She was only thinking of me. I stared blankly at the bed curtains, ignoring what he said. I really never wanted to see him again. Not long after, Shu Miao Miao became pregnant too. He began staying in her palace every night, filled with laughter and joy each day, but my body grew weaker by the day, deteriorating more and more. I finally died on an unremarkable winter day. Palace consorts and ministers knelt everywhere, but only Qin Shao didn't come. The second before I took my last breath, he was still coaxing a young palace maid, just because a corner of her skirt had gotten torn. The old eunuch who came to deliver the message looked at me with pity. His Majesty says, "The Empress is virtuous, and if there is a next life, he would still choose you as his Empress. Your Majesty, please rest in peace." My hand fell limply onto the cold brocade quilt. Memories of the past dissipated before my eyes. As my consciousness faded, I only thought, I'll never be his Empress again. The cold wind swept up dust, making my eyes sting, and scattered those memories of the past. I looked at Qin Shao's narrow phoenix eyes, my tone indifferent. "Your Highness remembers wrong. I never wanted to be the crown princess. In the past, I was merely a qualified empress. No sense of self. No emotions of joy, anger, sorrow, or happiness, only the heavy phoenix crown and ceremonial robes. Since I've already missed it once, how could I repeat the same mistake again?" A flash of loneliness passed through Qin Shao's eyes. "Your character is upright. Your knowledge outstanding. In my heart, you are the most suitable person to be the crown princess." I tugged at the corners of my lips, my tone carrying a hint of sarcasm. "Your Highness only speaks of suitability, but have you ever asked me whether I am willing or not? The inner palace is fraught with danger at every step. One misstep means eternal damnation. I am just a weak woman too. So why should I put myself in such a perilous place, exhausting my mind and body day after day, never finding peace?" Every word, every sentence were things he had once said. Qin Shao froze in place, a trace of shock flashing in his eyes. After a long silence, his thin lips moved slightly, as if about to say something. Actually, I didn't wait for him to finish before interrupting. "Your Highness need not say more. This is something I've already decided." I turned and left, leaving him standing alone in place. The sound of wind swept past, stirring up the scattered osmanthus petals on the steps. I thought we would never cross paths again. But the threads of fate had already woven a dense web. During the spring hunt season, banners fluttered in the hunting grounds. It was always a grand event where ministers' families and imperial relatives turned out. In simple attire, he just picked an inconspicuous corner to sit down. From time to time, I'd chat with a few familiar noble ladies about interesting happenings in the capital. We chatted so well together that most of the gloom from recent days dissipated. Even the fruit wine on the table had gone cold. I picked up the wine cup and was about to bring it to my lips, but was interrupted by a low voice. "This wine is cold. Your stomach isn't good. Better not drink it." Following the voice, it was Qin Shao staring at me with a heavy gaze. I immediately froze in place, because of this form of address, and also because I couldn't understand why he knew about my physical ailments. Even more puzzling was what position he was putting me in by saying such things in public. Then Qin Shao waved his hand, and palace servants came to bring a cup of hot porridge, steaming with heat. Whispers arose all around. "The choice for crown princess has been delayed. I heard the empress found some more women a while ago, but the crown prince still hasn't found anyone to his liking. No wonder by the looks of it, it is probably because of Miss Shu." Listening to their discussions, my scalp kept tightening. I recalled that in my previous life, Qin Shao went along with the little palace maid's wishes and everything, willing to accommodate and compromise. But when it came to me, he disregarded my wishes completely. I just needed to follow his arrangements. Watching the topic escalate, it was almost burning me up. I suddenly stood up, my voice especially clear as I enunciated each word. "This subject's stomach has always been robust. I especially love cold things, and usually enjoy cold drinks and ice cream. I suppose His Highness the Crown Prince has mistaken me for someone else? I wonder which young lady it is that His Highness keeps in his heart?" As soon as the words fell, the entire room went silent. Even the wind through the hall stopped at this moment. Qin Shao didn't answer a word, only gazed at me through the crowd of people. In those eyes, emotions I couldn't understand were surging. When the banquet ended, the weather suddenly changed. Bean-sized raindrops came crashing down, instantly creating several puddles. I stood under the corridor, pulled my cloak tighter around my shoulders, waiting for the manor's carriage. At this moment, familiar footsteps came from behind me. The wind is strong at night. The road is difficult to travel. I've come to see you off. Qin Shao's voice mixed with the rain, rarely carrying a hint of warmth. I turned and bowed to him, my movements carrying a hint of distance. No need to trouble your highness. This subject's carriage will arrive shortly. Qin Shao was originally an indifferent person, but now he stepped forward, lowering his voice. Actually, there are some things I want to say to you alone. I don't understand. Why do you always avoid me? The patter of rain was in my ears, through the misty vapor. I looked at his narrow eyes, because I've seen our future. The days in Cunning Palace were always damp and cold. Even burning charcoal couldn't warm it up. Just like my broken and shattered body. To support Qin Shao, I actively cut ties with my maternal family, disciplined those royal clan members, thus became estranged from my maternal family, spending holidays alone and desolate. Later, because of him, I lost a child, yet couldn't even get a single proper word of comfort. As I lay in bed, barely clinging to life, I watched him laughing and chatting happily with others, enjoying himself thoroughly. Through the endless long nights, every day I kept my hollow eyes open, praying for the darkness to pass quickly. My heart was already covered in scars. He treated me so coldly. My love for him had long since burned away. Not even ashes remained. I barely had time to hate. How could I still throw myself into the fire like a moth? I lowered my eyes and stepped back, my voice soft yet firm. This subject only wishes for a peaceful life, and has never had any thought of entering the palace. Moreover, this subject already has someone she fancies, and has not a shred of romantic feelings for your highness. Qin Shao was stunned, a moment of confusion flashing in his eyes. The white jade thumb ring in his hand slipped for a moment, shattering on the ground with a crack. I paid no more attention and went straight to board the manor's carriage. The moment the carriage curtain fell, it cut off all his unspoken emotions. In the heavy curtain of rain, his shadow looked inexplicably desolate. Even when turning around, his steps were somewhat unsteady. Just at this moment, someone came running over, handing him an umbrella, their tone somewhat urgent. Your Highness. The voice was strangely familiar. I turned my head to look, and when I saw that familiar face, even my breathing stopped. I really didn't expect to run into Su Miao Miao in a place like this. At this moment, she wasn't yet that beloved little palace maid, and Qin Shao wasn't yet the supreme emperor. I lifted the carriage curtain, staring intently at the scene before me, suddenly recalling their lively, bustling times together. Qin Shao, as the ruler of a nation, disguised himself as a lowly guard just to be with his little palace maid every day. Back then, he shielded Su Miao Miao behind him and said to me with a solemn face, "You don't understand. Meeting her is what makes my heart come alive." Later, after I lost a child, Qin Shao even more brazenly forced me to swallow this grievance. But right now, when Qin Shao saw her, there was only a look of confusion on his face, without the joy I'd imagined. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. I had more important things to do. Seeing this really made me laugh out of anger. Su Miao Miao hasn't even become a palace maid yet, and she is already causing trouble. In her past life she pushed the female lead and caused her miscarriage. And now, in this life, she wants to pull the same trick again? Sisters, if we don't get revenge for this, we'd be letting ourselves down. But having said that, the female lead's revenge method of serving her with a hemp rope is so satisfying. But what surprised me most is Lu Xiao's entrance. Young general plus roguish handsome aura plus helping the female lead dispose of the body. This combination is simply the ideal man. And that last line of his killing is easy. Destroying the body is hard. It is like he has the word professional carved on his forehead. I sent people to follow Su Miao Miao for a while. She still, just like in her past life, would occasionally steal valuable things from the palace to exchange for medicine money for her family. She would still, on the third quarter of the shoe hour on the 5th day of every month, change into coarse cloth clothes and sneak out of the palace through a side path. So, on another night when she snuck out, I waited for her in the dark alley she had to pass through. It is a method you'd only choose when you hate someone the most. At this moment, in this deserted corner, I coldly watched her step by step walk into the trap that had already been set. Why? Why? Su Meow Meow stared wide-eyed in terror. Because you and I have an irreconcilable blood feud. When the assassin attacked, she hid behind me, but then pushed me out with her own hands. When she learned of my miscarriage, she put on a pretentious act on the surface, but a cunning gleam flashed in her eyes. I caught a hurried glimpse of that child. Already had a vague human form, yet curled up all alone, with no time to see this world even once. I failed to protect him, and can only repay this debt in this life. But Su Meow Meow is someone about to vanish. I have no need to answer her. Her unfinished words were stuck in her throat, and she'd never have another chance to speak them. I raised my head, gazing at the cold moon on the horizon, counting the time second by second. After a long while, the dark alley returned to silence. All sins had come to an end. Only then did I seem to wake from a dream, leaning against the wall, gasping for breath. Fingernails dug deep into my palm. Without realizing it, blood had already been drawn. After catching my breath for a moment, I propped myself against the wall to stand, wanting to deal with the trouble before me. But that instant just now had drained all my energy. My whole body was spent. Even moving half an inch was difficult. Just then, a scoffing laugh came from overhead, carrying a distinctive carelessness. Looks like you really hate her to the extreme, to actually choose to do it yourself. I raised my head and saw someone sitting on top of the wall. A young man in black fitted clothing, high ponytail, sitting carelessly on the wall, fingertips twirling a fallen leaf. His posture as leisurely as if sitting in his own courtyard. Only his face was hidden in shadow, unclear to see. My expression tensed slightly. When did he arrive, and how much did he see? As I pondered this, he spoke again. Why dirty the young Mrs. hands with such dirty cleanup work? There is an abandoned dry well in the back alley, very hidden. Just leave it to me. Before he finished speaking, the young man nimbly jumped down, standing in the bright moonlight. The moment I saw his face clearly, I froze. It was actually him, the renowned young general, Lu Shaoin. My previous life, I had seen him once by chance. At that time, the Rongdi invaded the border. He held on desperately for several months, sending military reports to the court for reinforcements one after another, but they were all intercepted by enemy forces. Not a single one got through. In the end, Lu Shao led an elite squad of less than 100 men and fought his way out of the chaos. The price was a penetrating wound on his left shoulder, deep enough to see bone, his black armor soaked in blood. Just like that, wounded, he knelt before the golden throne hall with his back straight. I beg your majesty to allocate provisions and reinforcements. The tens of thousands of soldiers in the northern frontier cannot be left to die in vain in the ice and snow. But the court was troubled over provisions. The national treasury deficit was simply too severe. Moreover, Qin Shao had recently misappropriated most of the internal treasury's silver reserves to host a birthday banquet for Su Meow Meow. Now, with military pay urgently needed, there was nothing that could be done. Deep winter, the 12th lunar months, snow piled thick on the ground. Lu Shao knelt outside the palace gates, his figure swaying precariously. It was I who held him up. I stuffed the hand warmer from my arms into his palm, then removed my fox fur coat and draped it securely over his shoulders. My voice steady. General, you've worked hard. As for the provisions, rest assured, I will handle everything. Latter, I pleaded with Qin Shao repeatedly, begged my maternal family for help, sold off most of my private treasury, and led the entire palace in reducing our meals, finally scraping together the military funds. Lu Xiao indeed lived up to expectations. In just 3 months, he completely reversed the border situation, with victory reports arriving one after another. He even struck directly at the royal court, securing hundreds of years of peace for the border. That winter's end, when I was gravely ill, I received a letter from him. The envelope was rough, covered in dust and sand. When I opened it, a neatly pressed cosmos flower fell out, still retaining its pale pink-purple color. Your ladyship, rest assured, I will handle everything. This was my only comfort during that dark and cold time. Lu Xiao helped me clean up the traces. Looking at his figure, I didn't know what to say for a moment. 1,000 words gathered in my heart, finally becoming just a simple thank you. Oh? How will you thank me? Lu Xiao raised his eyebrows. He moved a few steps closer to me, curling his lips into a smile, revealing a bit of roguish, carefree air. Miss Wen, how about you pledge yourself to me? My gaze crashed into his smiling eyes, and I widened my eyes slightly. Although I knew he was just teasing casually, I still felt a moment of stunned confusion. The night wind swept through the alley entrance, rustling down with scattered leaves. I only raised my eyes to look at him. My fingertips curled unconsciously. Lu Xiao still wore that smile, taking another step closer. Look at you, still so serious, can't take a joke at all. You should smile more. It is better for your health. His voice carried its usual teasing tone, yet his gaze was even softer than the moonlight. Then Lu Xiao removed the cloak from his shoulders and draped it over mine. The warm comfort mixed with the fresh scent of pine branches instantly dispelled the night's chill. That night, I slept well for once. The wind outside the window had stopped. In my dreams, there was no longer that cold and damp cunning palace. The next day, Mother came with a stack of scrolls. She was concerned about my unsettled marriage and deeply worried about it. Recently, there are rumors in the capital that the crown princess candidate hasn't been decided because the crown prince still has feelings for you. Since you are unwilling to enter the palace, we must find you another suitable match, so I can put my mind at ease. With that, she unrolled those portraits one by one. The men Mother personally selected for me were naturally all excellent young men, sons of noble families and newly appointed top scholars. Family, background, appearance, character, all were impeccable. I raised my eyes to look. As my gaze swept over the last portrait, it froze. The person in the portrait wore fine clothes and rode a spirited horse, with flying brows and eyes, full of the untamed spirit of youth. It was actually Lu Xiao. Mother saw my expression and broke into a relaxed smile. My daughter has such good taste, picking the best one right away. Among all these people, I am most pleased with him too. And you know what? The Lu family heard the news first and took the initiative to send someone with this portrait. They even prepared 100 taels of gold for the gatekeeper, specifically instructing to place this portrait in the most prominent spot so you'd see it the moment you walked in. It seems he must have taken a liking to you early on. Otherwise, why would he rush over to send his portrait? I froze for a moment. My cheeks felt inexplicably warm. Mother was already smiling and making the decision. Since both parties are willing, this marriage is settled then. These past few days, I've been busy preparing for the wedding. While shopping at the store, as I came out holding red paper, someone blocked my way. It was Qin Shao. He stood under the corridor. Fine dust settled on his sky, blue brocade robe. I thought he was going to confront me, but instead, I heard him say, "Su Miao Miao is gone. Is it because you still have feelings for me?" I froze for a moment studying his expression. His gaze was deep and bottomless, as if he'd been through heavy trials, no longer the noble bearing of the past. With just one look I knew, he had also come back. I raised my eyebrows slightly with a hint of teasing. "You don't blame me?" Qin Shao's brow furrowed. He was silent for a long while before speaking again, his voice filled with an exhaustion that couldn't be dissolved. It turned out that after I died in my previous life, Shu Miao began interfering in court affairs, extensively placing her trusted followers, indulging her relatives in their tyrannical behavior, allowing them to act recklessly. On top of that, she squandered extravagantly, causing the already depleted court to be completely bankrupt. And the common people had long been filled with complaints, with uprisings breaking out everywhere. Qin Shao, a dignified emperor, was reduced to an empty shell. He had no military power in his hands, no control over court officials, and couldn't even suppress the refugee riots near the capital. When Lu Shao attacked through the city gates under the pretext of clearing out the treacherous officials around the emperor, Shu Miao, to save her own life, actually handed Qin Shao over voluntarily. How could I possibly forgive such a treacherous and ungrateful person? Everything in the past was my fault. Now that I've been given a second chance at life, I will fulfill my promise. You only, you are my destined empress. Don't worry, I'll go immediately to request an imperial decree from Father Emperor to grant us marriage. Grant us marriage. I felt like I'd heard the biggest joke in the world. He clearly knew I was unwilling to marry, yet he still had the audacity to say such things. His so-called fresh start was nothing more than trapping me even more firmly by his side. I frowned, about to speak up in refutation, when a lazy and reckless voice beat me to it. Your Highness, are you planning to take a subject's wife? Lu Shao came riding on horseback, his face carrying a lazy expression that was half smiling, but his eyes looking at Qin Shao were cold and indifferent. He dismounted, blocking most of my body with his, shielding me for the most part. Qin Shao's gaze moved away from me and turned to Lu Shao. His pupils suddenly constricted, the pressure around him terrifyingly low. Lu Shao acted as if he didn't see his hostility, his smile unchanged in the slightest. His sleeve moved slightly as he brushed off a broken leaf from my shoulder. The gesture was intimate and natural, as if he had done it 1,000 times before. Then he turned around unhurriedly, meeting Qin Shao's gaze directly. Missa Yu is already my fiancée. We've already exchanged betrothal cards, and will be married in 3 days. No, your Highness wants to request an imperial decree for marriage. If this isn't a lord seizing his subject's wife, what is it? If your Highness continues to pester like this and word gets out, I am afraid you'll be ridiculed by all under heaven, damaging the crown prince's dignity. Please show some self-respect, your Highness. Qin Shao's disbelieving gaze was fixed on my face, even his voice trembling slightly. What does he have that is better than me? Your engagement. Why didn't you tell me? I held hands with Lu Shao, fingers intertwined, turned to meet his gaze, my tone flat and calm. This subject's private affairs have nothing to do with your Highness. Qin Shao looked at our tightly clasped hands, his figure swaying for a moment. Something in his eyes seemed to shatter. He stood there in a daze, muttering to himself. How could this happen? It should have been this way all along. That woman who devoted herself wholeheartedly to him was long gone. Lu Shao took me horseback riding in the outskirts of the capital, one of his arms wrapped around me, the other hand steadily gripping the reins. The horse galloped with hooves raised, the green grass on both sides rapidly sweeping backward. The scent of wind rolling through the grass rushed toward my face. My hair was blown into disarray, a few strands sticking to the side of my neck, bringing a slight tickle. The speed grew faster and faster. I instinctively tensed my back, but his warm palm gently pressed against it. Don't be afraid, I am here. Though it was just 4 simple words, I felt inexplicably at ease, my body involuntarily relaxing. I simply closed my eyes, letting the wind brush across my cheeks. The exhaustion from recent days seemed to scatter in the wind. Gradually, I also discovered the joy in it. The fluttering sound of wind against my clothes, the sound of the horse's galloping hooves, and his steady heartbeat pressed against my back, gave me an unprecedented sense of exhilaration, like a bird breaking free from its cage, spreading its wings to soar. I laughed heartily, me laughter mixed with the wind. Lu Shao laughed along. He raised his hand, gently tucking my disheveled hair behind my ear. This time, the things that made you unhappy, the people that made you unhappy, I'll clear them all away. You don't worry. Looking at Lu Xiao's earnest eyes, I froze. It seems he understands everything. In my past life, after I was driven to death by Qin Shao, he was the one who raised an army to purge the court, bathed the palace in blood, and sought belated justice for me. In this life, he has been by my side from the start, protecting me at every turn, determined to help me reclaim everything I am owed. Countless images intertwined together. A wave of bittersweet emotions surged in my chest, and I couldn't hold back anymore. I threw myself into his arms. Lu Xiao's chest was solid and warm, carrying a faint scent of pine. My face buried in his chest, my voice tinged with a sob. So, it turns out, I am not alone. Lu Xiao's arms tightened, holding me even closer. His voice was low and tender. You never were. The day Lu Xiao and I got married, with a 10-mile bridal procession in red. It was so lively. Gongs and drums filled the air, resounding from dawn till nightfall. The moment the red bridal veil was lifted, Lu Xiao's peach blossom eyes, with their corners tinged in light red, held a smile brighter than the red candles filling the room. You being able to marry you is the most perfect blessing of my life. From now on, year after year, I'll be with you. At this moment, I heard my own heartbeat, louder than the gongs and drums outside the window. Lu Xiao really is a very good person. He would slow down when I was absorbed in watching the street scenes, would remember that I don't like ginger, and every bowl of soup he handed me had it all picked out clean. Later, I followed Lu Xiao and traveled all over, first pacifying the bandit troubles in the south, then following him to guard the frontier. Lu Xiao fought enemies on the front lines, while I mended his battle robes in the tent. At the same time, quite a few things happened in the capital. I heard that after getting heavily drunk once, Qin Shao seemed like a different person. In just a few months, he implemented new policies with thunderous methods, dismissed redundant officials, and even shook the foundations of century-old aristocratic families. It seemed smooth sailing, but he was too hasty. In places he couldn't see, he had already made countless enemies, and among them, there was also me. This March, Qin Shao went to the epidemic area for disaster relief. Despite tight security all around, he still encountered a riot of displaced people, and was accidentally scratched in the chaos. The imperial physicians used various methods to treat the illness. Bowl after bowl of medicinal soup was poured down, finally suppressing the epidemic disease. But the strong medicine also damaged his foundation. Qin Shao remained bedridden with prolonged illness, even becoming mentally unclear with confused memories, sometimes calling out my name. So, I was invited into the Eastern Palace. Inside the hall was a heavy smell of medicine, making one's nose tingle. Qin Shao was half, leaning on the bed, looking listless, his face a sickly pale. He weakly held my hand. Can you call me husband once more? In the past, I loved calling him that most one time after another, wanting to have that kind of intimacy between husband and wife with him. But in the end, it only brought a lifetime of desolation. I peeled an orange tiny mist spraying onto my fingertips. Very bitter, very astringent. I broke off a segment of orange and put it in his mouth, then gently shook my head. Qin Shao's eyes dimmed. You actually hate me this much. Not just hate you, I paused. I also hope you die. Qin Shao's eyes widened immediately. It was you, he remembered. That day he was scratched. Even though guards were tight all around, those people broke through the defense line precisely like ghosts. Past life and present, the person in this world who knows his weaknesses best has always been me. It is just a pity I didn't kill him with one strike. Qin Shao spat out a mouthful of black blood. I looked at him like this and laughed softly. That orange just now, was it tasty? Qin Shao looked at me in disbelief. You actually poisoned me. I unhurriedly wiped my fingertips, then raised my eyes to look at him and said indifferently, "You should be grateful I only gave you this one poison." You? Qin Shao's chest heaved violently, making gasping sounds in his throat, but ultimately couldn't finish that sentence. Heavy snow was already falling outside, jade, like snowflakes beating against the window lattice, dyeing heaven and earth pure white. I pulled my fox fur closer and pushed the door open to go out. A familiar figure had been waiting for a long time. He immediately stuffed a hand warmer into my hands and held up an umbrella to shield me from the snow. "It is snowing heavily today. Let's head home quickly." If you were Wen Ayu, after experiencing all this, how would you choose your life path? A continue the border garrison life with Lu Xiao. Being a blissful couple B. Use memories from your past life to help Lu Xiao achieve merit and establish his career, changing the course of history. C. Return to the capital and participate in court politics as Lady Lu Xiao D. Peacefully enjoy a quiet married life, staying away from court disputes.